In which frequency range does porous sound absorbers work good, and why? This is another Q&A question that arrived to me. And to answer this question, I dug up my old trusty friend, the Slinky the Spring. and with this one, we could imagine that every little circle in the Slinky is like an air molecule that is bouncing and pushing and pulling on its neighbors. Now, if you have a sound in a room, when it hits a surface, something's going to happen. I'm going to demonstrate this by changing actually to my other camera here. Let's see how this goes. So now we're down on the floor here. Okay. Now, let's say that my left hand, this is the surface of the room, and then you have a sound that is bouncing inside this room. So let's see here if you got something like this. Now, if we look at this place here, you can see that when the sound is reflected, we have to consider particle velocity and pressure. So you get a high pressure here when it bounces on the wall or the ceiling or whatever this is, because here they're compressed into a thick layer like that, and you don't get that in the middle of the Slinky. If you look again here, and it's kind of obvious, because when you have a solid wall here, you cannot have particle velocity against a solid object. There's nowhere to go for these air molecules. So the only option they have left is to increase the pressure. However, particle velocity, on the other hand, that one's going to be higher when you go out into the room towards the middle. And that means if you want to dampen this sound wave inside a room, you should put your sound absorber so that you reduce the particle velocity. Because if you put the absorber close to the wall, you're going to place it where you have little or no particle velocity. And it's not going to have a great effect there. You will have much a greater effect if you put it here in the middle, where they're actually moving really much and you stop them from moving. But the thing that is a bit counterintuitive here is that it's going to sound more quiet, actually. What we listen to, what we hear in a room is pressure. So when the pressure is increasing, the sound is perceived as louder. But when we have high particle velocity, we have low pressure. So these ones are out of phase with each other. But we always want to place the sound absorber where you have high particle velocity. And yeah, I need to note here as well that this little example I just demonstrated is only valid for the first resonance frequency. You will have many more resonance frequencies inside a room. And yeah, this is a rabbit hole. As you can see, it's very hard to fit all this information in a single video. I have made another video with the Slinky where I'm explaining this phenomena and what's going on in the room. So I could put a link in the description to that video. And if this makes no sense, maybe you could watch that one and it might become a little bit clearer. But anyways, the basic principle still stands, that we want to place the sound absorber where we have a large particle velocity, and that way we can stop the air molecules from moving. And when we do that, it's going to be harder to build up a sound pressure as well, and that way we can take the sound pressure down. So here, if we look at the graph, we have the absorption coefficient on the y-axis, and we have the frequency on the x-axis. And as the thickness of this porous sound absorber is increased, its absorption coefficient, its ability to absorb sound, also increases. Now, with the porous absorber, I mean typical, like a sound absorbing ceiling, mineral wool, heavy cloth, that kind of material, a pillow or your bed could also be considered like a porous absorber. There are other types of absorbers as well, but we're not going to cover them now. What we're aiming at here is that we would like to place the sound absorber on 1/4 of the wavelength that's where the particle velocity will be maximum. And then if we put the absorber there, it's going to have the greatest effect. So if we have a 50 millimeter absorption material, we could place it directly on the wall or directly against the ceiling. That's usually 40 or 50 millimeters. I don't recommend you go lower than that. And with that kind of thickness, you would get with a good material, you could reach sound absorption class A, I think, and you will have good absorption from 500, decent, down to 250, but after that it starts to drop off. And the way to increase that is to place a thicker absorber. So let's say, I think you can buy also products with 100 millimeters, but yeah, you see, it starts to get quite impractical here. You can't just put 100 millimeters of soft material on a wall. That's like in a mental asylum or something like that. That's not going to work. So the ceiling is basically the place where you should get it. But you should also be aware of that if you have a 40 millimeter sound absorber that is mounted directly on the ceiling, you could perhaps achieve superior performance from a 20 millimeter absorber by moving it and suspending it inside the room. So you get a construction height of about 200 millimeters. So that's a better option to get more bang for your buck, so to speak. And with the suspended ceiling solution, you could also get proper sound absorption down to 125 hertz also. But if you want to go to the super low frequencies, well, that's a different story. Then, of course, you can do it with porous absorbers. You can always absorb if you just make them thick enough. But it's gonna be so thick that it's not practical or realistic anymore. And then you have to find other solutions. And I think that could perhaps be the topic of another Q&A video in the future. But I think, the formula, I could mention that as well. Here's the formula. If you wanna, you know that the sound, the velocity of sound that propagates in air is 343 meters per second. And if you want to find out what distance you would like to get a good absorption with a quarter of a wavelength, you could use this formula to calculate which frequency that corresponds to a quarter of a wavelength and which mounting distance you should use. So, anyway, in this video, I'm wearing a turtleneck merino charcoal gray jacket with a window pane. I think perhaps the same one as yesterday, but I just changed the pocket square. So just with a simple little shift, you can create a complete new look. And actually, I have to be honest with you today, I am cheating because I have this Fjällräven nature pants and socks that are not very stylish. And the reason is that we have like a snowstorm here in the north today, so I have to bring a shovel and start shoveling snow every time I want to go inside and outside from my house. And now my autofocus seems to it wants to censor me because the style sin is too much. might be some AI censorship going on here. Maybe it's for the better, perhaps. Well, but there's this saying about fit, fabric, function, I think it is, and in that order. If you want to look dapper, you start with a fit, make sure that you have a good size and that there are no wrinkles or stuff like that. And then you have a proper fabric. It's the second one. Like this one is a warm. It's a line. And it's a great one in the colder season, this jacket. And merino wool is also a fantastic material. But then you have the third one, which is function. And today I had to prioritize function higher because you cannot go out with nice looking pants and shovel snow. Well, you can, but you're gonna look mostly silly and not dapper while doing it, because now I can just do like this. And I'm, with this look, it's actually, this one I could get away with. Anyways, see you later. And keep the questions coming. I love it. Ciao.